The moment she walked into her penthouse office, everything froze. Not in awe of the sparkling chandeliers, the panoramic skyline, or the polished marble floors, but because she saw him there. A man, exhausted beyond measure, sprawled across her leather chair, his tie loosened, shoes scuffed, and a thin layer of dust clinging to his coat. He had fallen asleep at her desk, in her sanctuary of wealth and power, and for the first time in years, she felt something she couldn't name stir in her chest. It wasn't anger, though every instinct screamed at her to confront him. It was something entirely different. Confusion, pity, and a strange spark of empathy. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the extraordinary impact of compassion, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let this story remind us that humanity often hides in the most unexpected places. Her name was Isabella Carmichael, a billionaire known for her steel resolve, her empire of fashion labels and tech startups, and her unyielding command over her world. To the public, she was untouchable, flawless, and distant, a woman whose kindness was measured in donations and her charm in boardroom victories. Yet today, she was caught off guard by something she had never encountered in her structured life: real, raw vulnerability. The man in her chair, Daniel Mercer, was a janitor who had recently been hired for the night shift at her office building. A single father, he juggled multiple cleaning jobs while raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, in a small apartment across town. Life had not been gentle with Daniel. His wife had passed away 3 years ago, leaving him alone in a world that seemed to move too fast, with bills piling higher than his stamina could manage. But he never complained. He simply pushed forward, fueled by love for his daughter, working tirelessly to provide even the smallest comforts for her. That night, Daniel had worked later than usual, scrubbing floors, emptying trash, and polishing glass until his hands ached. He hadn't eaten since the afternoon, and his energy was drained. When he finally entered Isabella's office to clean, he didn't realize just how much weight the world had placed on his shoulders. He started dusting the massive desk, then, in a moment of weakness, leaned against the chair. The next thing he knew, his eyes had closed, and sleep had claimed him. Isabella stood frozen at the door, her heels clicking against the polished floor as she tried to process the scene. Anger flickered briefly, a natural reaction for anyone in her position, but it quickly dissolved as she noticed the faint trembling lines around his eyes, the quiet resignation in the set of his shoulders, and the unmistakable aura of someone who had given everything to keep going despite the weight of the world. She expected confrontation, arguments, or indignation. Instead, all she could feel was a deep, stirring empathy she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Her first instinct was to wake him. She approached cautiously, watching him stir slightly, murmuring in his sleep. And then, before her mind could rationalize it, she did something utterly unexpected. She didn't scold him. She didn't judge. She simply watched him, realizing that this man had spent years being invisible, overlooked by a world that often confused wealth and power with worth. Isabella understood then that sometimes people weren't lazy or careless. Sometimes they were simply human, and human beings were fragile. In that moment, she felt the power of her own humanity. She leaned against the doorway, silently making a decision that would alter both their lives forever. When Daniel woke, groggy and embarrassed, expecting a sharp rebuke, he found something he had not anticipated: a gentle smile. Isabella offered him a cup of hot coffee, sat across from him, and for the first time, they spoke without the usual barriers of employer and employee, billionaire and janitor. She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't question his presence. She simply listened. Daniel told her about Lily, about nights when he worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, about the little victories of getting her a new school uniform or a birthday cake. His voice trembled occasionally, not from weakness but from the raw weight of emotions he had carried alone. Isabella listened, and with every word, her heart grew heavier with both sorrow and admiration. She realized that behind every polished facade and every lavish lifestyle, there were real struggles, real sacrifices, and quiet acts of courage that deserved acknowledgement. Days passed, and Isabella couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. She noticed small details she hadn't before: the way he treated the cleaning staff with respect, the quiet diligence with which he worked, the exhaustion that lingered in his movements, and yet, the unwavering spark in his eyes whenever he mentioned his daughter. He was a man who had endured more than most, yet he had not lost his kindness or his sense of responsibility. Isabella began to question everything about her life, her priorities, and the walls she had built around herself. Eventually, she made a choice. She wanted to help, but not in the way the world expected. She didn't want to give him money outright or offer empty charity. She wanted to give him dignity, opportunity, and a chance to breathe without constantly worrying about survival. One morning, she called him into her office. Daniel entered cautiously, expecting perhaps a reprimand or instructions for overtime. But instead, Isabella handed him a letter. It was a job offer, not just a job, but a position in her philanthropic foundation, one that allowed him to use his innate empathy and understanding to help other families in need. It was a role that valued him, recognized his struggles, and gave him purpose beyond menial labor. Daniel's eyes filled with tears, disbelief mixing with hope. For the first time in years, he felt seen, valued, and understood. He hugged Isabella not out of obligation, but from a genuine place of gratitude that words couldn't capture. Isabella, too, felt a transformation, a softening of the armor she had worn for decades, a rediscovery of the profound joy that comes from helping others without expectation. Life began to change for Daniel and Lily. The small apartment they lived in was renovated, providing warmth and comfort that had long been absent. Lily, once quiet and reserved, blossomed in her new environment, her laughter filling spaces that had once been silent. Daniel, though still committed to hard work, now carried hope alongside responsibility. The weight of survival was no longer crushing him. It was shared, supported, and acknowledged. Isabella continued to watch Daniel grow, but more importantly, she grew herself. She began volunteering more, not for publicity, but because she realized the joy of connecting with real people, understanding their struggles, and witnessing resilience firsthand. Her empire remained strong, but her heart had opened in ways she had never imagined possible. The man she once caught sleeping in her chair had awakened something in her, a profound lesson about empathy, humanity, and the unbreakable spirit that lives in all of us. The story of Daniel and Isabella became a quiet legend among the building staff and her inner circle. It was not a tale of romance or drama, but of recognition, humanity, and the transformative power of small acts of kindness. People began to notice that Isabella's leadership had changed, that her presence in the office carried a new warmth, and that her generosity was genuine, not performative. Daniel's story, too, spread quietly among those who worked in offices, schools, and neighborhoods. Proof that no matter how invisible you feel, there is always someone who will see your worth. Even today, whenever Isabella looks at that leather chair, she doesn't see an intruder or a careless worker. She sees resilience. She sees a father's unwavering love. She sees courage in the face of exhaustion. And she smiles quietly to herself, remembering the night she learned that true wealth isn't measured in numbers, but in compassion, understanding, and the lives you touch. Before we reach the end, if this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let's spread the message that kindness is powerful and second chances can change lives in ways we can't imagine. And as you reflect, I want to ask something special. Comment below on the most inspiring part of this story, the moment that moved you the most. Your words might encourage someone else to see the world with more empathy. In the end, Daniel never forgot that first day he fell asleep in her chair. It became a symbol, not of shame, but of transformation. And Isabella never forgot the weight of seeing someone truly human, struggling yet surviving. Together, they proved that the world, no matter how cold or demanding, still has room for compassion, hope, and the extraordinary courage that lives quietly in those who often go unnoticed. Their lives intertwined in ways that reshaped both their futures, reminding everyone who heard their story that sometimes the most profound changes happen in the smallest, most unexpected moments. And so, a billionaire and a single father, two people from worlds that seemed miles apart, found connection, understanding, and a shared humanity that changed them forever. The chair, once a throne of power, became a symbol of empathy, second chances, and the quiet miracle that happens when someone sees you, not for what you have, but for who you are. Word count, approximately 1,810 words. This story is cinematic, emotional, and suitable for a YouTube video, with calls to action and a heart-touching arc. If you want, I can also create a visually storyboarded version with scene-by-scene descriptions for video editing to make it fully cinematic for your YouTube channel. It would pair perfectly with the story. Do you want me to do that next?